What's up, everybody? We have teamed up with Eastwood again to do another paint job DIY tour. We're doing a destroyer gray on something that's car related, but not necessarily a car. This destroyer gray is a single stage. I'm going to give you all the text on how to do the gun setup, how to do the spraying, everything you're going to do inside of the booth so that your paint job comes out perfect. Now, destroyer gray, it's kind of a recent fad. You know, you see it on Chargers, you see it on trucks, but it's pretty rare that you see it on classic cars. That's why it's going to be really cool on what we're about to do. Gun selection for this single stage paint job, that means there's only one thing going on. Not like a base coat, clear coat where you have to use two different guns, two different everythings. Single stage is really easy. You just shoot on one thing. Get your color, got your shine, good to go. Use a 1.4 tip gun. First thing you're going to do when you set up your gun is put in that air tip. Find your wrench, tighten it down. Put in your needle, then your spring, then your little locking nut on the back of the gun. Tighten it down for proper setup. You want to pull the trigger, tighten this down until you feel it start to move the trigger. That's how you know you got a full range of fluid. Then put on your air cap. Now you'll notice these two little thingies sticking off of it here. If they are horizontal like this, your spray comes out vertical. That's what you want in a normal paint job. But if you get into a weird bind where you need to spray up and down for some reason, you just turn this so that these are vertical and it makes your spray horizontal. We'll get into the gun setup as far as all this jazz when we get into the booth. Time to mix up our single stage. Now this is a 3-to-1, so that means 3 parts of the color and then 1 part of the activator, hardener, whatever you want to call it. Now make sure that you shake it up beforehand. That's pretty cool color. Now mix it up real good because you don't want any half-mixed stuff. You want to make sure the activator gets into every little bit of this chemical so you don't spray something on that never dries. It's real exciting stuff here. Maybe I'll fast forward. I'll fast forward. So how do you know when you properly got it mixed? Yep, that's mixed. If you're running a PPS cup like this, make sure you put your lid on. Actually, more importantly, make sure you put a cup in the little thingy doohickey before you go to pour your business in. Otherwise, you're gonna have yourself a heck of a mess. Don't ask me how I know. It happens to all of us, don't feel bad. Install the ring, pop it on your gun, and you're ready to go. Next up, let's talk about the environment in which you are painting. So here I am in my paint booth, and take a look outside. That's right, it's pitch black, because it is 4:30 in the morning. Yes, I look this good at 4:30 in the morning. Don't hate. There's a reason why I'm up so early though, because it's 75 degrees right now. I live in Florida. That means it's hot, and it's very humid. Right now, we're looking at 77%. That'll drop a little bit here when I kick on the booth and get some air flowing through here, but still, very high numbers. I don't like to paint when it's 90 degrees outside, so I get up really early to get my painting done to get these nice temperatures. Now, when it's 75 degrees, yeah, you could use a medium activator or something, but I still go to slows on everything because I like things to lay out as flat as possible. So pay attention to the environment that you're in. Temperatures play a huge part. If it's cold, like 30 degrees out, probably just don't want to paint. Your stuff's never going to harden unless you're one of those lucky guys that's got a heated booth. Down here in Florida, we don't need those heated booths. It's already heated in here. By noon, it'll be 90 degrees in here, and if I really want to, I can roll this stuff outside, get it baked in the sun. So think about the temperatures, think about your humidity. They play a big part in how your stuff is going to lay out. Here's what we are painting, gang. It might look like a regular front end off of a 58 Chevy truck, but it's actually a 1958 Viking front end. Look at these big old flares on it. We needed this front end so that we could get the flares and put them onto a regular front end for a lowrider truck that we're building. We needed to be able to tip those tires up inside of some flares, and it made a really cool product. But then we had this 58 front end laying around, and I know sacrilege, we went and we chopped it up. This is a super cool piece that we built for our friends over at the Motor Enclave. You can see that it's cut out and recessed for a receptionist to sit here and beep boop bop on a computer and hand people junks and stuff. You know, something unique, something cool. Cleanliness is next to godliness when it comes to a paint job. Wax and grease remover is your friend. Wipey, 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 wipey until this thing is so clean that when you run a rag across it, nothing comes off but rag. Think of it like cleaning your beehole, man. You're gonna wipe it just before it bleeds clean. Once you got everything wiped down with that wax and grease remover, then, you're gonna wanna tack rag this whole thing. So this is a waxy little rag that you don't wanna apply too much pressure because you don't wanna put this wax like into the surface and mess up your paint job. It's just something you lightly rub across the entire product that you're about to spray so that you get all the little tiny little guys off of that thing. Bugs, dirt, hairs, asteroids, whatever it might be. Lightly swipe, clean the whole thing. Now, to those of you that are painting at home and maybe not in an actual paint booth where you can control the environment, keep the dirt out, filter everything perfectly, you might want to try a little trick. Watering down the floor, it will help tamp down a ton of dust, not to mention it helps catch things that are coming into your vented environment. It's much better to do that if you're doing things that are not exactly in a perfect scientific environment. Just give it a little squirt squirt. Now that everything's prepped, it's time to suit up. That was pretty cheesy. Now that we're in the booth, everything is prepped, we've got our gun hooked up to air, it's time to talk about gun prep. When we were setting up the gun, we already told you, max out the trigger, turn in your fluid tip until you feel it start to pull the trigger. That means that when you pull the trigger, you have the full range of fluid moving through it. It's fancy like, right? This little adjustment down here, this opens up your air, so it'll change the pressure that's coming out of your gun. I always recommend putting a gauge on it because you never know what this is if you're just running it off of your hose. So I like to use a digital gauge, and when I set up my gun, it depends completely on what it is that I'm spraying. Now I've found with this Eastwood single stage that it likes 20 PSI, which is a little higher than I normally spray with like a regular base coat. Usually that's around 14 PSI. So there are spots in this trigger that give you different reactions. If you just slightly pull, you feel a spot where it stops moving. That's only air, there's nothing coming out of it, it's clean. If you go any further than that, stuff comes out. Ooh, fancy, right? Anyways, so I'll pull the trigger and I will adjust this until it says 20 PSI. Whatever it is that you're working at. And then this little guy up here, this adjusts your fan size. It could be on the side, you know, guns are different. But basically the idea here is you max it out, the biggest shell go, pull the trigger, and look at your fan. It's ginormous. That means it's probably too big. Another idea is to spray it onto something flat, and if it looks like two balls with a string in the middle of it, way too big. For this particular gun, I like to go about a turn and a half back. And I can look at my fan and see that I got about a 6 to 8 inch fan here at that 6 inch range away from the tip. Now we're ready to spray. Let's get after some of this. Eastwood calls for medium wet coats. That means when you look at the surface, it should look kind of wet. With a base coat, you go very lightly over things and it almost looks dry when you spray it on. You don't want a shiny appearance, otherwise you put too much material on. Now with a single stage, since they want it medium wet, that means you need to actually make this thing look pretty damp. Now when you roll across it, nice even movement across the entire thing. Follow that same path the whole way. You can come back and forth, of course, but overlap your stuff by about 50 to 75%. So on your next stroke, move up a little bit. And keep that straight line. You see how you can see the reflection across it? That is what you would consider a wet coat. Medium wet means that you're just moving a little bit quicker. Full wet is what you do with like a clear coat. You go really, really slow and really lay down a lot of material. I'm gonna mask up, we're gonna throw on the filter system, and I'm gonna paint the rest of this bad boy, and you guys just watch how it's done. Start round number 2. Time's up. Let's do this. Leroy! That's 2 coats down. I just mixed up another batch, so I'm ready to go in another 20 minutes and fire on that 3rd and final coat. Last coat, let's go. Fully cure for 24 hours according to the book, but it's hard enough to like stripe off if you're adding on stripes or doing flames or something crazy like that within about 2 hours. It's just really quick for a single stage, so I'm impressed with it. It laid out nice and flat. We didn't do any body work to these panels. Like we just scuffed them, primed them, scuffed them, and shot them. That was all there is to it. Now that I got 3 coats done, we're going to show you how to clean your gun properly. It's very important. Maintain your equipment. You finished painting, good job, but you're not done yet. Now let's say you went and got yourself a $9 paint gun from Harbor Freight. Let me show you how to clean it. That's right, it was $9. Go buy another one, you cheapskate. Now what'd I ever do to deserve that? Now for any other gun out there, you might actually want to clean the thing properly. Let me show you how to do that. Full tear down and cleaning is critical to maintaining your equipment. A lot of people will just fill this bad boy up with paint thinner or something and call it a day. No, sir, you can't do that because it messes with your seals, and in the end, it still leaves material inside of this thing that's gonna harden and turn into little rocks and be gross and nasty. Ruin all your future paint jobs. First things first, just fill her up, lacquer thinner, get all that big junk cleaned out of there. Spray it into something you don't mind getting a little thinner on, recycle it if you like, but get all the big junks out of the gun first. Once it starts coming out of the tip clear, you're probably pretty close, and tear down the gun completely. You remember how you put the gun together? Now do the opposite. Remove the springle-dangle-dangle-dangle thing back there. Get your fluid tip, your needle guy out of there. Remove the air cap. Grab your little tool ski wrench that probably came with your gun, and loosen up that air tip. Don't drop it, it's bad. Now we got it all apart, give her another little rinsey down. And then I like to use Q-tips to get up in there and really swizzle it good. The outside of the gun's probably got a little something who's it, what's it from all that spraying, so give it a little spray down, a little wipe down, keep your stuff looking nice, especially if you got one of the fancy guns that's got something crazy embroidered all over it or engraved it. You know, you spend a lot of money on your equipment. Don't ruin it. Air cap, same deal. It's probably got a bunch of junk on the front of it because that's where all the stuff was coming out of it and getting hit by the air and doing the little thing that it does. Spraying. Ominous, pompous, omni patria, Feliz Spiritus Santos. Get off the big junk and then get in there with a Q-tip. Swizzle. Clean your little hole out right there. Call a little something in there. Let me clean that right. That's pretty clean right there. Yeah. All right, next on the fluid tip. Same dealio. Get the big junk. Get in there with a Q-tip. And this one I really like to just hammer it home. This one ain't as much of a swizzle as it is a stick. The old needle. You just put a little thinner on there. Wipe her down. The gun's clean, needle's clean, tip's clean, cap's clean. The spring and the little handle guy, I mean, wipe it off and get any junk on it, but you don't really need to do any critical stuff to it. Now, as far as maintaining the gun, there's a little seal inside of this trigger area where your needle goes through. Put a little seal oil on it. It's not actually a silicone-based oil. It's something that lubricates but won't ruin your paint and end up with fish eyes and junk like that. Once in a blue moon, lubricate your gun so it doesn't die on you. But that's it. You're clean. Now let's get back in there and take a gander at how our paint came out after it's dry. That is a bodywork free paint job with that single stage. And I'm not gonna lie, it did pretty dang good for just a farm truck that we scuffed and shot basically. This Eastwood single stage is fantastic. Look at that glossy finish. Yeah, it's got a little bit of orange peel, but I didn't put any effort into making this a flawless paint job. It's a desk. It looks amazing for a desk. This Destroyer Gray is a cool color, very modern, not something you would see on a classic car originally, but I think it's gonna be fantastic once we got this thing put together. If you guys got any questions, comments, complaints, whatever about this DIY instruction video, you guys put it down in the comments. Smash that like button, subscribe, follow along for more cool car stuff.